Editing Jody here. I'm talking to you in a dark room with an inappropriately long lens because it turns out this ramble right over here that you can't see because it's overexposed, I made it like a year ago about ideas for my own operating system, and I don't think I ever actually edited it together and posted it, which is amazing to me. I seriously thought that this was on YouTube. And if you find it on YouTube, please let me know so I can delete this video. But it's about a year late, but here you go. It's a rolling ramble that everybody missed out on because I somehow screwed up and forgot it existed. Hello, my friends. Today we're bombing through the boonies of Chatham County, North Carolina, where not many people are, but there's always somebody who wants to drive down the road faster than I do. So you may see interesting things happen back here somewhere. Anyway, someone asked a pretty good question in a comment. They said, if you have your own operating system, what are you going to do about getting hardware vendors to support it? What are you going to do about getting hardware vendors to release information, intellectual property as they put it, to make it work? Like so that someone else can write drivers for their hardware. How are you going to get software that matters onto the system? Now they said, how are you going to get it ported over? And I think one of the big things that was missed in the video that they asked this on is I'm not going to get them to port it over. The goal is to not get people to port a bunch of old garbage over to the new system. That's not what I want. I would want the new system to be pure. We're not talking like Terry Davis Temple OS type stuff here, but I wouldn't initially at least want anybody to make any other software for the system. Now, this runs completely counter to what we have learned over the past 40 years, which is it doesn't matter if your Commodore Amiga invention is so much better than the other computers out there. Without a killer app, or two or three, you're going to fail. You're not going to be able to really get any market share because nobody can use your computer to do things. I don't want to make a system that allows this garbage in just for the sake of running up against that. Like, it doesn't matter that initially nobody will be able to do anything with it, because initially the flip side of that is nobody would be able to do anything with it anyway. It's a fresh new system, and the whole point would be to write software that adheres to the way this new system works instead of grafting the garbage software that already exists for other systems onto it. Now, it is inevitable that people will port trash to the system at some point. You know, garbage software will end up there. But the goal would be to set everything up to where the garbage software would look like garbage compared to the other software that exists and is native to the system. This is sort of like how the Amiga ended up working out for a few years, because in the beginning, it was just third-party ports that were not necessarily very well done of other video games made for other systems natively, and they just half-heartedly just made it work on the Amiga, taking no advantage of the features and capabilities and such therein. And that's the problem. With any new system, you need to take advantage of what the new system has to offer. Existing software and drivers and all of that, they're made for existing systems. Bringing over that garbage to the new system, rather than rewriting it fresh natively for the system, it implies that you're bringing everything that's wrong with it to the new system, which will make the new system look like garbage and will make it fail to see any sort of a major adoption. So my plan, were I to create a new operating system, would also be to create the basics, a browser, for example, a word processor and spreadsheet. Actually, most people's basic needs are met just by having a browser, a word processor, and a spreadsheet. That's about all that you need for most people. The ability to print and things like that, of course, notwithstanding. If you can do those things, you've got a system that is functional. Look, let me put it this way, okay? Chromebooks are a thing that exists and that people pay money for and use. Chromebooks are web browsers. Now, I know they added the ability to put Android apps on them and all this stuff, but in the end, what is a Chromebook? It's basically a glorified web browser installation. That's it. That's all it is. It's a giant, stupid web browser running on top of a Linux kernel, and there's not much to it. What's the point of a Chromebook? You know, that's the thing, is if you look at Chromebooks and you look at Windows PCs, there is so much in favor of a Windows PC, especially at the same price point. I don't understand why you would ever get a Chromebook unless you were buying something that is intentionally so incapable and brain dead that Grandpa, who has never used a computer, could at least use that. I mean, that's the thing. It's like for little kids and for really, really old people who don't have any tech skills. And I'm not saying that to be demeaning to old people or little kids. I'm saying that these are groups that typically do not have the understanding of technology and thus would need something that is more restricted so they can't hose it. Of course, that's not going to stop Grandpa from hitting a scammer webpage delivered through a malicious ad network and then calling the 800 number, but I digress. So a new system with enough software that it would work for basic purposes for a good chunk of the population, well, you're already pretty much there. As long as that system works on at least some common hardware, you're fine. Now, I want to get to that hardware question. You know, how are you going to get vendors to write device drivers? Well, Linux doesn't do that. In general, Linux does not get vendors to write device drivers so much as they write their own. Now, yes, vendors do write device drivers for complex hardware like NVIDIA cards. NVIDIA writes drivers for them. But open source drivers exist too. And I'm not really that worried about that right now. If I was to start making a system and it gained some traction, then there would be interest from vendors in creating the software for it. In fact, I would want to gatekeep vendor drivers as well. I would not want vendors to be able to freely write drivers and put them out there. I would not want garbage drivers to make my system look like garbage. And a lot of drivers that are provided to the open source community right now, well, since forever, really, a lot of them are hot garbage. Nobody gets the same level of quality on Linux from their graphics drivers that they do on Windows with those same graphics devices. So hardware vendors have already proven that any system that's not Windows, they're basically only going to half-heartedly support. If they're going to do that, I don't think that their support should be necessary at all. If they're not going to do it right, they may as well just not do it. Screw them. You know, we'll write our own. We'll figure it out. You know, we can look to other existing open source drivers to reverse engineer how some of these things work and make them work on the new system. But that's the thing, is if the vendors aren't going to do it right, I don't want them around in the first place. So I would only do such a thing insofar as it makes a system work enough for me to get traction on. And yeah, you'd basically be clawing the entire time to get some market share, to get some traction in the overall market. But I think it's important to keep out garbage elements, and that's what I feel like does not happen with other systems. In open source, anybody can offer up anything, and you would think that that would mean that the cream of the crop, the best stuff, that's what would win in the marketplace of ideas, because open source it's open source. It's anybody can contribute, anybody can judge, and the best stuff is what should rise to the top. However, that is not how it works, because people are stupid. I am not excluding myself from this. People, if you wrote the best device driver ever for NVIDIA cards, for example. The most amazing device driver for NVIDIA cards. Something that solves literally all of the problems, gives you the exact same level of functionality as on Windows, you would still fail. Nobody would ever actually use it because NVIDIA didn't write it. People are this stupid. They will ignore a far superior solution that already exists out there, or that is in the process of existing, in favor of going, well, this is what the hardware vendor officially supports, and for some reason I think that they are, they have our best interest at heart. Whatever, it's their hardware. Why wouldn't they have the most interest and thus be able to put the most time and resources and all that behind making it work the best possible on this platform? Because they don't care. You're not Windows. So there goes that logic. But people will roll with that. There is no little annoying Roland Ramble fairy in their ear saying, hey, dummy. Hey, guess what? You're wrong, and here's why you're wrong. No, they do what they want to do, and that's the end of it. So I wouldn't worry about vendors of hardware giving me what I need to write drivers. There's already enough open source drivers that can be used as a reference in general for pretty much anything anyway. And more importantly, I would not feel the need, especially in the beginning, to support a wide range of systems. In the beginning, I would probably code for 1 or 2 individual computers, maybe 3, it just depends. But I would not be coding to work on every single machine in existence. I would not care about that. What I would care about is making sure that my system worked on existing machines that could be acquired relatively affordably. Because, you don't want to write an operating system you can only run on a $15,000 giant server thing. You want to be able to run on a $200 or $300 laptop too. So, and that's the thing, is I will not care in the beginning about gigantic servers with 128 threads and 64 terabytes of RAM or whatever. I just don't care. Because why would I? I don't care if my system runs on those right now. You keep the scope limited. You don't keep it so limited that you code for one machine and then when you move it to another machine, everything just falls apart. But I don't feel like I have to support every machine that exists out there, or even half of them. I feel like what needs to happen is you develop the system first and you expand support to other machines later. You get the core right. This is part of the problem with the way that things exist today. The core can't be right because all these fingers get in the pot because it's open source, and oh wow, look at how quickly it's developing. But then the problem is, it's developing so fast and so widely that we're making decisions quickly that may not be very good decisions. So just because it works on a maximal number of systems early on doesn't mean that it's a good system. Assumptions might be made during the process or might be baked in that then become massive technical debt down the road. Notice that in all of these videos about me talking about this theoretical operating system I may never make, that technical debt is always one of the things that comes up. There's a reason for that. It's because that's why there's so much crap going on with existing systems. It is inevitable that a new system will also have its own technical debt. So the goal would not be to not have any technical debt ever. The goal would be to minimize it. Write a system that is designed to be as excellent as possible without setting itself up to have too many bad decisions made, especially early on, when those bad decisions magnify and become bad decisions that have to be worked around by everything in the system or that are impacted by everything in the system. You get the idea. I've detailed how one single choice by the Linux developer Linus Torvalds has basically made it so that every program has to calculate the length of a string again after the operating system already knows that information, and string operations are slow, and you see where this is going. You've probably heard it if you've been following this series of videos. But that was just one example. There are countless examples if you go digging far enough. There's no shortage of things that could be optimized. But the problem is, if it's optimized like this, if you make these changes too late, after a ton of software is created that works with it, well, now the software makes the assumption, and if you want to change the assumption, you have to slow down that software with some kind of compatibility layer, which kind of runs counter to the whole point of improving performance when you lower performance. So yeah, I don't want to make these kind of mistakes up front. But I've beat that drum 100 times. I probably should stop beating it. Anyway, I think that Apple has proven that you do not need to support a large range of hardware to be successful as a computer software company. You don't need to have a massive range. It would probably work even if I just picked like a single vendor. You know, let's say I only wanted to support Asus. You know, probably would work out fine. Or maybe I only want to support this on Intel nukes. I don't know why I would be that stupid. But the thing is that most laptops out there are low to mid-range Intel and AMD laptops. They're not ARM. They're definitely not like Zhaojin or whatever they are, the evolution of I. You know, they're not. Most of the computers out there that you're going to run into, they have pretty similar hardware in them. And if you limit the hardware that you support in the beginning, it's not a problem, because then, okay, only people that have that hardware can run it. But now you're not wasting your time developing for a lot of hardware when you don't even have a fully working system otherwise yet. You've got to set up that core to be useful before you extend the support into other machines. So if the core is solid, if you write it properly, okay, then when it's time to start adding more machines, you will have gotten the foundation correct to minimize development time for other systems that may have some serious differences. That's it. It's just, why do I have to support all that hardware? Why do I have to support, why do I have to tolerate porting garbage over to the system? And make no mistake, if Adobe, I don't know why they do it, but if Adobe ported Premiere Pro or Photoshop over, okay, they're very feature-rich, complex applications, they're pro-level applications. But I don't want Premiere Pro and Photoshop. I should have my own Premiere Pro and Photoshop for my system. And no, of course, you're not going to beat 20 years worth of software development in a year or two. But you'd be shocked what you can do in a fairly short amount of time with a few persistent people who want to solve a problem. I'm not saying that I could just make an operating system and all these big programs overnight. I mean, it does take a long time to even just write a browser. A browser is an extremely complex piece of software, and it takes a long time to put that together. Image editing is not as simple as it might seem. You could make an MS Paint program. Some people could possibly make an MS Paint program in a few days. But if you want an image editor that can do, 16 or 32-bit color, all the different... There's just so many things these days that you can do with image editing that you couldn't do back in the early 2000s, for example. If you want to support that, yeah, it's going to take more time to develop. But I think what we need to do is just do it. GIMP has been in development for a very long time, but I think that one of the big problems with GIMP is it too stems from a much earlier time, and I don't know exactly when GIMP started, but I'm gonna guess late 90s, maybe early 2000s. But it's from a much older era. And there's a whole lot of that baggage baked into GIMP. It's taken them years just to get to the point where they might release GIMP 3 soon. The GIMP toolkit, which is GTK, has already seen, what, 2 major version iterations in the past 10 or 15 years. We've already got up to GTK 4 now, and GIMP is still on GTK 2. I mean, that's the problem. There's all this technical debt in GIMP, and I still can't. I can do all kinds of neat stuff in GIMP, but I still can't draw a damn circle. I can't draw a circle in GIMP properly. I can make a circle selection. I can tell it to stroke the selection. It's not a proper circle, guys. It's just not. There's no reason GIMP should not have vector-based tools, and yet they don't. They don't have any vector-based tools at all, other than path. And good luck drawing a circle with a friggin' path tool. Anyway, I've talked enough on this. We can talk about it in more depth. If you're interested, leave a comment or 2 or 3 with what you think, and I will catch you in the next one. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that crap. Take care.